Sweet. Welcome back, everybody, to the next episode of Retention Chronicles. Really excited for today's episode. We're joined by Jim Breese, who's head of growth at AppHub. Jim can probably do a much better job explaining AppHub than I can, but I recently came across them at a couple conferences at the end of 2022. Met John, who I think might head up BD or something similar
for ops.
there.
Yeah.
Ops. Yep. And we talked and just seemed like a natural fit to have these guys on the podcast. So really happy to have you, Jim, and appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thank you for having us, Noah and Mariah. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So Jim, you know this, but we like to start every episode before we get to the shop talk on a couple personal notes. So would love to hear one or two things that you're really excited about in your personal life right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's two main things. I have like a few focus points this year. A lot is to be around. I want to get a dog this year. I had a dog for a long time, and our last dog passed away in February last year. So I've been kind of waiting and say, all right, it's now time to get a new one. So I want to get a dog this year, and I want to get a West Highland Terrier. I think we're looking for. I've had one when I was growing up, and now you see them all over Instagram. I'm like, I got to get it again. So that's one thing. And then I think taking a lot of trips this year. I want to go to Hawaii. My wife is from there. So we'll go out to Hawaii and kind of do an outer island trip and see some paradise. I'm in Detroit, Michigan. It's gray. It's 35 degrees.
It's no Hawaii.
Yeah, it's no Hawaii. So there's that. And, maybe do some exploring of the upper peninsula of Michigan, kind of get to see some more nature and more, things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I had to look up West Highland Terrier.
I did the same thing.
Okay,
I had to confirm. I was like,
it's the dog on the Caesar food,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Mariah, do you have a dog? I haven't had a dog since I was like a kid. So
Yeah. Growing up, we had one, a French bulldog, the cutest thing in the world. Her name was Brie. So definitely after the French cheese. But yeah, that's the only dog I've ever had. But I mean, if it was up to me and I didn't have to have the responsibility, I feel like I'd have many pets, but yeah.
Totally. They just make your life so much more vibrant, having a dog in the house. I'm here working at my house all day by myself. It would be nice to have something to kind of hang out with and just like tool around with during lunch or whatever. So we'll see.
Yeah.
it forces you to get outside too, which is not always easy for us in the Midwest, especially during these months. So that's awesome. And then Jim, Hawaii is like literally top of my list of anywhere in the world that I want to go. I've visited a lot of places, but I'm even outside of the country, but Hawaii I haven't been to, and of all the places in the world, I think it's like literally at the top. Have you been before?
Yeah, I've been I think 6 or 7 times. My wife is from there. So we go there, we used to go there every year. And then the pandemic hit. She's been back subsequently since the pandemic started, but I'm going to be going back with her this year. So yeah, it's a beautiful place, and you're like, wow, this is part of our country here, these are, it's such an amazing place, so the plants there, the water, it's just an amazing, the food, the people. I love it there. So I'm excited to go see the other islands. I've been to Oahu for every one of our trips. So I want to go see kind of, the Big Island and some other places that are a little more remote and kind of, get that vibe in there, the island vibe.
Awesome. Are there any things that are there any places or like excursions that you would say people don't think about, but when I go for the first time, for example, I should absolutely do, but I won't necessarily find if I just search best things to do in Hawaii?
That's a great question. I think that one of the things that I didn't know was big out there was shrimp trucks. So there's this thing where you drive down the kind of the highway, there's these trucks. There's one called, oh man, I don't remember the names, but you'll see them when you're going up on the east coast of Oahu. You can start to see on the highway these trucks, and they're so good, but the line is so very long too. So I think that's one of the things is to get the shrimp trucks and try to find some smaller beaches that are kind of off the beaten path. I think that there's a lot of beaches like in Waikiki where it's like, hey, this is where all the tourists go. But if you can kind of get where the locals go, it's really, really cool. We got to see in Sharks, I think it's called Sharks Cove, just kind of snorkeling and seeing animals and just seeing different little tide pools and stuff. It's very, very interesting. Something you don't get out here. Michigan has tons of beautiful water to explore, but what's out there is just something else. So yeah, lots of food. Go and get all the kind of local food. They got local kind food. It's awesome.
Yeah, like one of my favorite foods, even here in Indianapolis, is like acai bowls and what's the one with like tuna and salmon?
Poke bowls.
Pokey,
Poke.
yeah.
Poke, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I would be in hog heaven there in Hawaii.
Yeah, and Wailua, I think is what it is. There's a couple, like every, how would you call it? The grocery stores have like some awesome poke. So you go out to like, I think it's Wailua, and they have some awesome grocery stores out there that kind of have all different kinds. So yeah, if you like fresh fish, go out there and get all the kinds of fresh fish from the smallest places you can think of.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
This is making me want to just plan a trip
And
immediately
Foodland,
after this call.
and Foodland is the greatest like grocery store out there. They have all this kind of food you can take with you out there. But yeah, it's a cool place. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mariah, maybe the next Malemo Summerfest.
I was gonna say, do you think we can
Committee.
convince the
Yeah.
team? That'd be
Uh,
so awesome.
Before we get into it, Jim, I'm also curious. You're in Detroit now. Have you always been there?
Yeah, so I grew up in Detroit. After college, I moved out to Los Angeles, actually. I spent 11 years out there. Then in the middle of the pandemic, I moved back to Michigan. And I've been here for about 2.5 years now. So yeah, I've been kind of just in Detroit, East Lansing. I went to Michigan State University.
Nice.
And then, I went to LA. I lived in downtown LA, lived in Pasadena by the mountains. It's just like, it's a beautiful place. California is an amazing place to go spend. And I cut my teeth out there for, all my business stuff. And it was like being a very hyper competitive environment. This is when startups were kind of being like the cool, hot thing. Everybody had to have a tech startup or they were working in tech. And it was just like the place to be at. So I'm very grateful for my experience out there in California.
Well,
I'm sure it taught you a lot. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're playing with like all the top players in that space. I know great, San Francisco's got a lot, but there is a lot of people still there is a tech scene in LA. They may not seem like that, but maybe more entertainment tech, but there are a lot of things going on out in LA, and you're very connected to San Francisco. It's just like a 1 hour flight up there, so it's not too far.
Right. Yeah. That's a great transition because my next question was like background. What did you go to school for entrepreneurship or general business? And
I went to
that was sort of the route. Like what was how did that all play out?
I didn't really think a lot about when I went into college, what I was going to do. Like a lot of my friends were like, we're going into the business school and doing finance. And I was like, okay, this seems like fun. I'll go do that. And I'm really good with math. I was doing like AP Calc and things. I was like, all right, let's do finance. And so I got a degree in finance, and then that was pretty much it. I learned entrepreneurship. It's like as a kid, like I was the one selling pixie sticks and like going to Costco and getting stuff and like selling stuff out of my locker.
I did the same thing. Costco
Yeah,
had the parents pick up like the 50 pack of M&Ms.
Yeah.
I think I actually got in trouble for that. Like maybe suspension. They're like, you can't run a business out of your middle school.
I was competing with the school store and I was like, I'll undercut. I don't care.
Out of the locker. Yeah.
I'll do it for 88. Don't worry about it. So that was kind of the thing. It's, I like to find value. I like to help people. I think entrepreneurship is a great vehicle for helping people solve problems. And that's something I like to do. I like to think about a lot of things and then go execute on them. So entrepreneurship was just a natural progression of my finance background and just other things I've been involved with.
Awesome. And so when you moved out to LA, did you actually like start something yourself, or did you just join a startup? Like what was that path?
Yeah, I had a very like long, we'll say lots of turns in my career. I went out there, I had no job planned. I went on Craigslist and I started selling insurance, like kind of a scammy insurance job. And it's just like something to keep me going, and then I worked at Panda Restaurant Group. So they own all the Panda Expresses around the world. And I got a lot of great experience there. It's probably one of the best corporate jobs you could ever get. They take very good care of their people, but they also like drill into you great operations and execution excellence and things of that nature. And they allowed me to work in different departments. I started in the mailroom, then I went to finance, and then I went to brand marketing. And when I was in brand marketing, I was like, oh man, there's a lot of good opportunities in food. So I started a tea company, and I moved into that and started a loose leaf tea company. This is when like Teavana was really popping, and Starbucks was their golden years of Starbucks. And then from there, I got more into like content marketing and blogs and things of that nature. So I didn't really work too much in tech myself, but I did a lot of consulting in tech for marketing. So my background got more into marketing as I progress my career. I just thought there was just so much cool stuff with marketing. I thought marketing was scammy when I was growing up, you know, it's just TV ads and, you know, the phone book, right? But then I started using like, you know, Facebook ads and Google ads and kind of peeling back the layers of what can be a great marketing tech stack and a great marketing, you know, content strategy. And I just fell in love with content. So a lot of the businesses I've built with content, you know.
Awesome. And then take us to AppHub. Like what ended up leading to that?
Yeah. So I worked at a CPA firm in the cannabis industry specifically, and I did a lot of work there, a lot of content work there as a CMO. And one of the ladies, or one of the women that got hired, she worked there for a while, and then we both kind of left the company at the same time. I was helping consult on her business, and then she gave me a phone call, you know, after a while, and was like, "Hey, I'm at this new startup called AppHub, and we need someone in growth. Would you want to interview for the position?" And it was like from, you know, that first call, maybe like 3 weeks later, I was at the job. So yeah, it was just like, that's like my biggest advice is like, you know, always help the people that are around you. Like, I'm a big proponent of doing free work. You know, I think it's important to do free work to help people out, to get into other people's businesses and see how they're running, what they're thinking about. And that's kind of how I got this job, you know, and I've gotten most of my jobs, you know, not the corporate job, but a lot of my jobs came through doing free work. Demonstrate your ability, and people will pay for it, and they see that value.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take. I have a similar, I guess, mindset, but it's more derived from like, so many people helped me when I was younger in my career. I co-founded a company out of school, and then worked for a bunch of like litany of enterprise MarTech companies, I think for probably a lot of the same reasons that you ended up going the marketing route, Jim. But now I just find so much value in like paying that forward.
Yeah, totally.
Like, even if like nothing directly comes back, like the feeling of knowing that you just helped somebody that like was once, or like you were once in their shoes, is just so awesome.
Yeah. And you get smarter, you know, the more things that you touch, the more businesses you get into. Like I was in Vistage for a while, and like had a startup founders group, and I got to work with like 12 different founders every month, you know, on their businesses, and they were all at different stages. So it was like my MBA, you know. Vistage was a great experience too. So I think it's excellent to do good work for people and free work if you can afford it. I know people it's a polarizing topic. I can understand that, but like you said, you got to pay it forward, you know, like, yeah.
Whatever you can do, right?
Yeah. Create your own luck. You know, no one's going to give you your opportunity. You got to create that for yourself.
Absolutely. Okay. So getting into AppHub a little bit, I would argue it might be like the most unique partner that we've sort of had on the podcast, in the sense that my take on it, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're almost like an app aggregator. Like you bring apps in and kind of stitch them together to create, maybe it's not a one size fits all, but it's like a la carte options that all talk to one another and sort of hit the most prominent categories across the Shopify app stack. And that is probably ignorant of me to say Shopify, because I don't know if it's all exclusive to Shopify, but that's my understanding. Tell me like where I'm right, where I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so at its very, very core, we are an app aggregator, but that is a very unsexy term, and it really pulls away all of the kind of no, and this is the category we're in, right? Like, but I think, you know, there's a thesis out there that there's a lot of great technology out there, and there's a lot of great builders out there, and they like to build amazing products, but they need help with a lot of different other aspects of their business, you know, finance, marketing, taxes, customer support, HR. Like no one likes doing any of that stuff. You know, developers like to sit in front of their computer and develop. So we wanted to give these like founders a little bit of liquidity and put them into a container to focus on building valuable products, while a team of professionals can come in and do each discipline and help with everything else. So, you know, we've acquired a fair amount of companies, I think 7 or 8 companies at this point, in different sectors, mostly Shopify, primarily on platform at Shopify. And then there's some that are off Shopify, like reviews.io and Viral Sweep. And then some of the other ones that are on Shopify have connected with BigCommerce, WooCommerce. But yeah, Shopify plays a big part into our business. You know, we're kind of tied at the hip for the moment.
Okay, that was so much better said than so real quick, just to be clear, are all of the apps under the portfolio Shopify compatible, or are some not today?
Everybody is Shopify compatible. So everybody is on Shopify.
Yeah.
So everybody is on Shopify, and some do off platform as well.
And then I think I heard this correctly, but and it was actually a question I had. When you acquire a new app, new company, you typically, it sounds like, leave the founders in place to continue to develop their product, and just figure out how it fits all together, which I'm sure you do way before the actual acquisition. But
yeah, I mean, there's two types of deals. You can either bring the founders, you give them the option, like some people have been working for a decade on these products, and what you've come to find out is that they want to continue to build. I feel like they were looking for an event like this to say, all right, to validate we did the right thing. Now we have the juice to go and squeeze for a lot longer. So I think all of our apps, the founders are still there. There's actually 2 of them that they're not there, but that's okay. We have developers, like in-house developers, that take those over, and we let those brands persist as well. Like we haven't rolled up everything into one brand name, and we can get into that a little bit later about the different kind of strategies for aggregators. But yeah, try to bring the founders in because they have that core vision. At least bring them on for a certain amount of time so they can do the transition phase and kind of give us the peek behind the curtain so we know how to actually build and work this app. Taking over a code base is now no easy feat. So,
Absolutely. And I'm happy you brought up the idea of interoperability across the stack. Do all of the apps today, and I know reviews.io is very recent, right?
Yeah.
At least the public announcement of that. Do all of them, when you acquire them, is there an immediate plan to integrate them across one another so that if somebody wants to buy all of them and plug them all in and seamlessly, that's an option? Or is that super nearsighted for me to even think that or ignorant for me to think that that's
no,
possible?
It's not ignorant at all. I think, hey, that is the crystal vision we would love to be able to have a lot of that interoperability between the apps. But look, there's 2 ways to create a platform. You either rebrand everything as the parent company and bring everybody kind of interoperable, or you allow these brands to kind of grow on their own and create their own name brand. We have kind of gone with the latter there, and people are still kind of in control of their destiny. There is some interoperability. There's, tech integrations, things of that nature. But I think in this, the second, third, and fourth year of our business, we'll do a lot more of deeper integrations, deeper ability for customers to get a bulk discount. But, we are kind of working on it takes a long time to build these types of things up. M&A is, you think, hey, you just give them some money and then you bring the business in. It's a lot more. There's a lot of, gelling that needs to happen and things that need to come together to combine businesses, combine cultures, to combine customer bases even. So it's a long process.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you said 7 or 8 apps under the portfolio right now. I'm curious what went into, what goes into the evaluation process. And then I'd love to start with the current portfolio and then get into what categories you're really interested in taking a deeper dive in. What do you think will flourish in 2023, given, the macroeconomic conditions and what we're seeing across the e-commerce space more specifically?
Yeah. So the question, so what we have now, we have reviews.io, Viral Sweep, Conversion Bear, which is a suite of 20 different apps. And then we have RoboTurk, which is a dress validator, Appicon, which has a couple apps, Rich Returns, Order Bump, and then Next Sale. So that's our current portfolio. And that's been built over since October 2021. So the past, 14, 15 months, 16 months, we've been putting that together, reviews.io being the latest one for us. And then, assessing app. And so your other question was assessing apps to acquire, right? So I mean, the market is full of great apps and lots of opportunities, I think. And, we looked at all the Shopify apps, all 7,000 of them. We continue to look at them, and they're all at different stages. We have Matt Tenenhouse and Arjun Batra from our CEO team. And then Matt is on our M&A team. And then our, investors, everyone is looking at sending us leads. So you go through a lot of leads, you go through a lot of off-platform stuff as well. And it's a long due diligence process. You've got to talk to these founders. They're all at different stages of their business. And if you find a founder that's way too early for us, you still stay in contact with them because our business will be around in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So when you're ready and you're at XYZ, spot, then let us know. And we kind of try to stay in contact with them. But I think a few main things to look at when you're doing M&A in this space is like, this app has to solve a real problem. We've had an environment of 0% interest rates and like VC money that just flooded in, and like everybody that had an idea was able to get funding, and it was just not conducive to building, real value. And you're seeing those things being flushed out of the system. So I think solving a real problem is number one. And for us, they've got to be a market leading solution with a core product market fit, where it's like, hey, if the lights or if the marketing stopped today, you would still be able to keep your core business going, that people still would find you, they still love you. Another one is excellent reviews. You can have a great app. A founder can tell a great story. They may be a marketer, they may be a presenter, and they're like, look at this great thing, and it does all these good stuff. But if like no one's giving you feedback on that publicly through reviews, and that's a kind of a red flag there. Another thing we look at is high retention rate, or an improving retention rate, right? Churn is a really big thing. And if people don't find value in your app for the long term, then we can be bleeding money at some point. And lastly, I think is still having juice to squeeze that I brought up earlier. Like if you're at the peak and your valuation is going to also be way too high potentially, or is like there's nothing else to do to tangentially connect you to other parts of the market, or to create new feature sets. I mean, there's always going to be opportunity, but I think there needs to be a few obvious, forward path to success in there. But also there's a lot of variables. There could be lots of different types of businesses. The ones I named earlier, they're all at different stages that we've acquired. And that's what makes our platform great, is because when you join AppHub as a founder, or, we bring your business in, you get to learn from everybody else and like where they're at in their different sets of knowledge and what they've experienced. And, it's not just about creating cost savings. Any PE firm can create cost savings. It's about creating true learnings for the founders so that we can improve these apps and, improve the value of the business.
Yeah. Yeah. That's some great criteria, I think, and really helpful to get like a view into how you assess. You said the crazy stat of 7,000 apps in the Shopify ecosystem alone, and it's probably there's probably been 10 more launched today at least.
Yeah.
We obviously fit in that space. First question is, there's inherent overlap a lot of times, like across apps, even if they're not solving for the same core problem, right? A lot of them will have some functionality that overlaps with, like for us, we have some partners that offer lighter weight versions of what we have, but we still partner with them because they're really good at what they do well, and we're really good at what we do well. How does that sort of play a factor in your evaluations? Like would you acquire a company that has some overlap with an existing portfolio company?
Yeah, so we've done that. Exactly. We've done that. So we have Conversion Bear, which is a set of apps. And they have an upsell app called Honeycomb. It's a very good upsell app. But its pricing model is different than the other one, which is called Order Bump. And Order Bump is primarily focused on Shopify Plus. And so it's just, you kind of address different markets. One is selling up market, one is selling to mid market. It does have up market and plus people in there. So it's just, it depends on where it fits. Is it going to cannibalize us? There's a lot of considerations. Also, like how far is the product? What kind of penetration does it have into the market? Things of that nature. So yeah, nothing's off the table. You just kind of have to look at each deal on an individual basis and say, what are we looking to get out of this? You can buy a company, you can buy accretive revenue, but what are you actually looking to acquire from them that help your portfolio go to that next step? And it's a very nuanced analysis you need to make every time you go to make an offer on a company.
Sure. And then in the case of reviews for reviews.io, for example, I'm curious if anything specific about like reviews themselves, like you even said it in, your criteria when you're evaluating apps, that reviews are super important. Mariah and I, I think have the same belief, especially as it relates to like our merchants, and including reviews on product recommendations on our tracking pages was like a really nice use case that we launched last year. But I'm curious, just generally speaking, is part of it also like being like really bullish on a certain category of app, or like a certain problem that needs a better solution? Or is it really just looking at like the fundamentals from a business perspective? Does that question
Yeah, that makes a good question. And, there are some categories where we really need to go and get something, and reviews was one of them. It's a critical process. I think it's like 93% of people in e-com, like that are consumers, use reviews to make a purchase decision, and so going to find a market leader, the market leader, reviews.io, was a very important thing to go and get. But I think it's also focusing on core fundamentals. I brought up earlier, a lot of bad behavior was fostered during this kind of like 0% interest rates, where everyone could kind of build something. But when you get to like, what is e-commerce, what is happening in commerce? And it's like word of mouth marketing is very important. That's how things spread. And this is a new way. Reviews.io is a new way to spread that word of mouth marketing. And it's just it's a beautiful app. It does so many amazing things. Callum and Tom and their team have done an amazing job building this over the past decade, I think 11, 12 years, and this whole team, I don't know everybody at the team, but they've done an excellent job. So it's focusing on, certain categories that are not going to go anywhere. Like you might see some fancy, like, oh, these tag managers and this thing, and like something that's very technically, like it's bleeding edge, but there's certain things that are just like core to the essence of sales and transactions, and reviews.io is one of those.
Yeah. We are super bullish on reviews.
Heavy on reviews. Yeah.
Also, like even for Malomo, right, Mariah, like we're always looking for that social proof and validation, however we can get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like one of those things that I feel like now, I forget who we were talking to, Noah, about this in another podcast episode, but like Amazon, I feel like set the precedent because they like are so heavy with those reviews.
Yes.
And now it's like shopping online, you see something without a lot of reviews or something that doesn't have any reviews, and you're like, is this a new product? Like, what's like, has no one tried this?
You feel like you're gambling, or is it, like, you're rolling dice.
Exactly. And especially with like, I've just noticed my own habits, and if I find something from, say, like an Instagram ad or a Facebook ad, and then I'm still like a little bit skeptical sometimes, just depending on if I don't know the brand or if like they're not verified, whatever. And so if you go into like their website and there's no reviews, then you're like, okay, this is just not, like, I'm not ordering from here. It's not worth the risk if like, there's going to be like, is my product going to be shipped to me if people tried this? It lends into a lot for like the consumer, and then also just like merchants and buying habits, and like, so both the tech and the consumer side of it. Super important.
Lives are busy. We have so much data coming into our life, like we do lean on people, like, all right, it's got, one's got 50 reviews and one's got 200,000. You're going to go with the 200,000, granted, now we're going to get to the point where minimum 10,000 reviews on a product on Amazon, or you're like not going to look at it. But also that creates some bad behavior too, with merchants paying for reviews and things of that nature, which I think Amazon's doing a good job flushing that out of the system as well. But yeah, I mean, reviews and social proof and testimonials are very, very important into convincing your customers that they're making the right choice. Even if it's a $5 item or a $500 item, you're still reading reviews on it.
Right.
Because it's that moment once you open the package and it doesn't work and you're like, what the hell, dude? Why did I even buy this? Even if it's like 30 cents, like, for example, like we bought, I had some fondue last night for the first time. We bought fondue sticks. And they were like, they came all janky, and it was like, we bought it, and I was like, so mad, because they didn't have reviews on there, but I was like, this one, like, they look good, like they had great pictures. And I was like, this is where I broke my kind of, model of like, only get the highest reviewed ones. So yeah, it's just a small thing where I was like, I was disappointed, but so we ended up using forks last night, which is okay. It worked out, but it's just like, you wanted that fondue experience. You tried to create it and you were let down. That was part of our experience last night.
Yeah.
Never again.
Right there, like fondue, of course.
Yeah. That's awesome. How was the fondue?
It was excellent.
Haven't had fondue for so long, and now it's top of my mind.
I've never had it. It was my birthday yesterday, so my wife made me some.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, she surprised me. And she's like, "We're gonna make something you never had it before," and so we made our own fondue. I don't know, like cheeses, a couple types of cheeses, and then like tart cherry juice, cornstarch. I had some wine that I've made a couple of years ago that's been aging, so I put some wine in there, and it was just a beautiful, like, and I made some homemade bread, and it was just excellent. So
happy late birthday too.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lovely birthday dinner.
It was excellent.
That's awesome. Okay. So when you look across AppHub's portfolio now, you've got reviews as the latest. What are the categories in 2023? Whether, there's obviously a lot of assumptions about what we're going to see on the macro side. There's a lot of e-commerce specific assumptions, and I think there's no consensus really. So whether or not those assumptions play a part or not, where are the gaps in AppHub's offerings right now that are like sticking out 2 or 3 categories where you're like, we are really keen and looking heavily into these spaces?
That's a good question, and that's a question I think a little bit more for Matt. And I think it's, it's not any specific categories. It's like our job is to build revenue and to grow a business. And it may not be in specific categories, but I think looking at it in a sense of what businesses are going to do really, really well this year, I think those are going to be apps that save merchants money and demonstrate tangible ROI. There is no question about it that the macro it's not going to improve like by Q2 and like everything's honky dory. Like there is still max pain to be felt. So I think that, merchants are churning out of e-commerce, and those that are sticking around are slimming down their tech spend. It's like a real fact of our business. And if you work on Shopify, you have the built-in Shopify churn sitting on your churn as well. So you need to solve a real problem and not just build something you think that merchants need. So I think for 2023, something that's sexy and hot, I think is AI. I'm on Twitter, you see all these people talking about it. I don't think it's going to replace people. I think it can like reduce the human time spent on things, but I think it's going to turn marketers into like narrators or prompters versus having to do all the heavy lifting, like ChatGPT, please write me 10 Google ad titles that are 30 characters for XYZ business that are optimized for high click-through rate. Tell it what you want it to do. It will get you 85% of the way there. Then you can massage things. But overall, I think it's going to get back to, again, great operations and the basics of e-commerce, a long time, people have been creating businesses that were not really businesses. They were just VC funded growth machines that grow at all costs, but they weren't really putting out that ROI. So I think cross-selling and upselling is going to be a big thing. Like some merchants don't even know that exists and that there are tools to do that. And this literally shows ROI immediately. I think analytics, beyond just like CLTV and revenue, like give me actionable insights. Like GA 4.0 is turning on for everyone in July. If you don't have your tag implemented, you better get it implemented. And what can you pull from that tag, and how, what actionable insights can you give to people? I think store design is going to be super cool. Like Malomo, I love the kind of ways you optimize like the most viewable pages. People are checking their shipping status like, 5, 6, 7 times. That page is very, very valuable real estate. So what can you do to make more money on that page? So I think that's going to be something special. We have a new app called Checkout Bear that's on Shopify for Shopify Plus. They have a new Shopify has a new API for checkout. So it's, been one of the ones we launched as of recent. So it's not always about buying apps. Sometimes we're doing more development on the internal side too. And I think marketing automation is going to have, it's really big heyday. There's been a lot of marketing automation coming, but I think it's becoming more for the average merchant. You have to understand merchants are not tech people in most cases. They need it very, very easy. That's why things like Zapier are very successful. Yeah. So, you want to be able to give a merchant the feel of having a full-time employee for the cost of a one steak dinner, per month. If you can give them that kind of value, you will have no problem keeping them as a customer. So those are my few categories I think that are going to back to basics type of things.
Yeah, it's funny that you said AI. I immediately thought, so John on your team, who I met in Toronto at Shopify's conference this year, we sort of hit it off. We were having some drinks and we ended up talking about podcasts, and he recommended a podcast called Prof G Pod, which has become by far my favorite podcast find of 2022. And I was listening to it this morning, and he was doing his 2023 predictions. And he said AI is going to be like the biggest thing in 2023. So sounds like between you and Prof G.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be
confirmed.
Yeah, and you look at like I think yesterday Microsoft said, hey, we're going to roll ChatGPT into Bing and make it like an actual search engine and not just some like nebulous tool that nobody but their grandma and like people that work in corporate because they can't install a Google Chrome browser use. So I think you're going to see like a big cannibalization like of Google, of their ad platform, because I can go there. I don't have to worry about the top ranking article. I just ask ChatGPT, what's the answer to this? And it gives me enough to like be directionally correct. And then I can maybe have a more pointed search. But, a lot of stuff is going to go away. I think for you might see search volume decline on a per capita basis. We'll see, but I think it's a very exciting time. I don't think it's going to replace us as marketers. I don't think it's going to replace tons of jobs, but I think it's going to make us much more efficient, help us be more creative, get past creative blocks. Like, again, give me 10 ad titles. Like some days I just have a headache and I like a block. I don't want to do it, but I have to redo ads. So give me something to work with. And then I can, you can't edit anything if you don't have a first draft. And if ChatGPT can get you to first draft very quickly, you're going to be in a much better position to be an effective marketer.
Totally. Yeah. The ChatGPT thing is just incredible. It sounds too like, a lot of the predictions are, you said sort of get back to basics. And a lot of the more tactical, I think, advice that you had was sort of around like, understand how to grow through your base and don't just focus 100% on acquisition. So would you agree with that? And if so, like, what role do you think retention now plays in like this new age of cost savings and needing to be really efficient with your growth?
Yeah, I think like, hey, look, user acquisition is great, but a lot of user acquisition over the past few years has been, through paid channels, grow at all costs, whatever it costs, get them in there, we'll make it back over time. But that kind of is gone now. I think retention is probably the most important thing for any business to stay alive, right? It predicts current revenue, future revenue. It's almost like a net promoter score as well, to a certain extent. It's like, hey, do people actually care what we're doing here? Because if you have a very low retention rate, it's very like demeaning on your mental state when people are like, we worked our asses off to get people through the door. And then like they're leaving in 2 months. Like we haven't gotten even maybe, 70% of our money back, depending on the way you acquire them. But I think retention is going to be the most important metric for SaaS companies going forward. Like you just cannot ignore the fact that money is falling out. Like fix the holes in your bucket before you go add new features or go acquire new customers, because optimizing a few percentage points on your registration page, having interactive exit funnels for cancellation, all those things are going to play a much bigger role when you go and have the ability to go acquire more customers, because now that bucket has a lot less holes in it. So I think it's very, very important to not ignore the fact that if you have high retention, you have an issue. Or if you have low retention, you have an issue. You need to take care of that, because it's not just going to magically fix itself. Because you see founders who are like, they just don't get it. Well, then explain it to them, demonstrate it to them, educate them, show them, So retention is going to be big.
Yeah. I've said this stat on the podcast before, but it's just always top of mind for me ever since I saw it a couple months ago. And it was a Shopify number that said in 2013, the average e-commerce merchant lost $9 for every new customer on that first purchase. Today it's $29.
Ooh, maybe.
So, it's more than 3x in 10 years, and that's continuing to rise, while at the same time retained customers coming back for repeat purchases has grown from a revenue standpoint. So like, you're losing money on acquisition, you have to keep them to just get to break even, while at the same time your customers who are coming back are actually making you money on every single purchase. So to your point, Jim, I think that I totally agree with you. Obviously, a little bit biased, but I also believe that there's data there to back it up.
Yeah.
And I think that brands do 100% need to start optimizing, not just like their mindset and their approach, but like their stack to retention, and maybe even think about investing more there than on the traditional acquisition channels this year.
Yeah. I mean, spend Q1 figuring out how you can pull a few knobs, run a few tests to see if you can improve these metrics. It's about the integral of over small things over a long period of time. And if you're, going to be around for a while, then do those small things. They may seem very unsexy and unfun, but like, you're going to need to test your checkout page. If you're a merchant, you need to do that. There will always be a winner in the A/B test. So run the test. And if you have the winner now, great. You at least can feel good when you go to bed that we have the best page that we could possibly have. But yeah, you need to work on retention and spend Q1 doing that while things are shaking out with the macro. We have no clue what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. I'm a little bit pessimistic, as it sounds like that things are going to get worse before they get better.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Fed has like very crude, broad tools, and they did a bad job with letting inflation run high. Now they're going to have to over tighten to make sure that they don't let this thing perpetually run. Now we're going to start comping over last year's larger inflation numbers. So you may see like year over year inflation go down, but if it's still persistent, you might see them like back off, and then you get a second dip of or second wave of inflation in the third or fourth quarter this year. And this is all conjecture, I have no idea. This is just like a thesis. We guess at it, but people's pocketbooks are being squeezed, so we'll see what's happening with it. I think it's an interesting time to be watching the world. It's a lot, but it's something interesting, and it really affects your life. So you should pay attention to it.
For sure. Yeah.
Is there, what happens in that case for e-commerce?
In the double inflation, that kind of double wave? I think, man, that's a good question. That's an excellent question. I think you see people, I think that some businesses are like still on teetering, like, hey, should we keep our store open or not? We're at break even right now. And if they start to see costs just balloon, that you can't stop the cost of envelopes going up or inputs for your product going up. And if it become too costly, you're gonna have to take cost increases and price increases. I know some people are like, oh, we don't want to be corporate greedy and this or that. We have an ethos if we don't do that. But like, bro, this is business. You need to make sure you have a margin, like you have to protect your margin. And that's just the way it is, So when they say like 50% of inflation is from corporate profits, like, well, duh, when you have an input go up by $1, you need to double that because your margin is supposed to be 50%. That makes sense that it has gone up by 50% or contributed from corporations doing that. So I think you'll see people taking more price increases. I think you'll see some customers start to buy down, trade off for cheaper alternatives. I think you'll see maybe less frequency in purchases. Like if you're doing beauty products, maybe someone will try to stretch that beauty product out a little bit longer, or things of that nature. Like nice to haves may be, kind of going away. But hey, what can you do to adapt to that? Do you need to make a lower level product? Do you keep them involved with your brand in a certain way? And if, hey, look, those people that are kind of trading down are not buying from you, how can you still keep them engaged once their pocketbook gets a little more padded? That's where content comes in. Like, keep them a part of your community still. So I think there's still value to be delivered. You may not be making money, but like this one-to-many communication of content, it's my favorite thing to do. Like we're tripling down on content this year for our business, because content is like, it's intellectual property. You get amortization of revenue automatically. Every year it makes you more money, and you get to sell while you sleep. So that's kind of what I think will happen, but who knows, it's going to be very interesting.
Real quick, have either of you read Marcus Sheridan's book, They Ask You Answer? Because that's all about like content, and I'm currently reading it. But like kind of what you just said, Jim, of like really focusing on content to help grow your company and like grow the relationship you have with your consumer. That's what it's all about. I would definitely recommend it. But I was curious if you had read it, because it seems like very similar to your beliefs and driving content and all of that great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I am a very big, and I know this guy's polarizing too, Gary Vee. I love like the early Gary Vee. I haven't listened to him for a year or two. When he started doing the NFTs and all that stuff, it was like, hey, I'll
that's
back
what
off.
I was out too.
But look, the core of what he's saying is like, look, attention is the biggest currency on the internet. That's why people do very wild things to gain attention. But you can gain attention in your small niche. You do not have to be Tim Ferriss. You do not have to be Andrew Huberman. You do not have to have 1 million people watching you. You just need the right people to be watching you at the right time. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs, you don't have to create content. You can just document what's going on. Like we don't create content in our business. We document what's happening within our business, what our customers tell us, what we are seeing on the front lines. And if you get a point where you create content, that's great, but like just document what you're doing and share that. I think it's very important.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to circle back on that you said earlier, and I'm wondering if, the macro sort of is affecting this. We've had some customers of ours that have been legacy customers and done really well in e-commerce, churn because they've shut down all of their e-commerce operations. From your perspective, Jim, like what is a reason that a brand would like just completely overnight basically shut down e-commerce and focus solely on the big box retailer business model.
Customer acquisition cost. DTC is very, very cool. You get to get right to the customer, but sometimes when you can get a deal with Target to get an end cap and you can move 50,000 units, you may not make a lot on each unit, but you're getting huge brand recognition. You're getting the cosign of a Target or a Walmart or a Whole Foods.
Yeah.
So, and like, look, it's a numbers game. They're not just doing this like, oh, I don't like this, it's not fun. It's like, no, it's financially not the right thing for us to be doing. We have the connections now to go to big box retail, to do these other things. I think it's probably down to a finance thing, a customer acquisition cost thing. Like you brought up, we're losing $29 for every customer that we bring in. Myers is not, Walmart's not doing that for, so it's like, hey, we can still keep our brand alive. And then if e-commerce comes to a point, or we find a person that can run inside of our business, e-commerce, then we'll jump back into it. But I think there's probably a combination of customer acquisition costs, depth of talent, how do you run it? Like it's a totally different animal doing DTC versus, distribution through a large channel, like again, a Walmart or a Target, a Whole Foods. And some people go directly to the Targets and the Whole Foods and the Walmarts. I have a friend, Cynthia, she has a company called Bloomer's Island, and they've got a lot of great products for kids. And they got a deal with Target, and it just like totally blew her business up. But that relationship has turned into a lot bigger things for her, So
yeah,
you just don't know until you knock on the door and someone answers.
Yeah. That's a great perspective. I've been really perplexed by it, but I think your answer and some thoughts I had along the way make it sound a lot more like nice in a lot of ways. Like, I've kind of thought about it as like a dismal, outcome, but now that I think about it, it's like, what's so bad? You have, to your point, this steady stream of customer who's not millions of individual customers, but one or two big box retailers, and a lot more consistency, a lot better ability to forecast and figure out, the next one that you can go after. And if, the direct to consumer route was burning cash, but this route is not, it's earning cash, then I can see how that would make sense for a lot of businesses.
Survive at all costs.
I'm sure that they're, very grateful for the fact that their DTC business probably allowed them to get to, the point where they were able to approach a Walmart or a Target and have a seat at that table.
Yeah. I mean, the buyers for those brands are on Instagram, they're looking at these things. So you needed to do that. It's not like all for naught, but
yeah.
Right now, it doesn't make sense for some people. It's like, let's continue to work with these big retailers. When it becomes financially viable, we'll go back to offering maybe a certain subset of our products, or like only the most expensive ones that we think we can move extra units for. I think it's probably a financial choice. I don't think that people are so short-sighted. They're like, this is too hard, we're done with this. Or like, there's too many internet companies. We don't want to do this newfangled internet thing. There's too many, distribution channels. There's too many marketing channels. I think it's probably a financial thing. And the board at all those companies is probably like, hey, look, dude, we need to make sure we don't lose money. Like, it's, again, 2023 is about survive at all costs. Capital is super expensive. So if you're not profitable right now, find a way to become profitable. Because you're not going to find VC funding or debt at great terms right now. Because everyone's licking their chops in the PE and VC world, like cannot wait for you to be at max pain so they can come in and pick it up for 10 cents on the dollar and then grow your brand to something very, very special, especially like these very like older brands, like I think Gary Vee did K-Swiss, you're going to find things like maybe these older brands that are just like, we just cannot compete. Someone's going to come in and they're going to do excellent, beautiful work with it. So I think it's creating a nice, fun environment to see, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So just to wrap up on like a bit of a more positive note, I think, the big takeaway for me, and Jim would love to get your either approval or denial or any additional thoughts, is like, you need to maximize your existing customer base and grow efficiently through that, given the higher acquisition costs. But the good news is, like, there are so many tactics and tools out there that can help brands do that. And I think that we're, as an industry, sort of focusing a lot more on retention. So those resources are more prevalent now than probably they've ever been before.
Yeah, I could totally concur. Focus on your core audience. When I worked at Panda, there was a stat, and I think it's like from Frito-Lay, 10% of their customers bring 90% of their revenue.
Yeah.
It's a very I think they call it the 80-20 rule, right? But I think for some businesses, it's very, very lopsided. And like, don't forget that it's not about how many customers, it's like CLTV and making sure people come back more, make sure they feel appreciated. Like, these are going to be the years where you may have to do a little bit more to make customers feel like it's worth for me to like forego this expense to come back and buy from you again. Like, I may not buy this beauty product because I want to buy this athletic product. So you have to make them very well aware that it's worth the money because it transforms their life. There's like a lot of things that are great to have that are just not going to be there anymore. So be thoughtful of that, and, again, survive at all costs and become profitable.
Awesome. All right. Last question. We bring it back to the personal side. You've obviously had a very interesting and awesome career path to date. Dabbled in the entrepreneurship side and cool, travel journeys as well. What sort of like advice would you give to anybody, who has like an entrepreneurial minded career journey in front of them that they're desiring, and whether it's a tool or a book or some sort of advice you received along the way that's helped you?
That's a good question. I would say, if you're an entrepreneur, be in action. You can't become an entrepreneur by like watching YouTube videos and stuff. You have to like do stuff. So I would say, like, don't be afraid to look stupid. Build in public if you can. If you have the confidence to build in public, because you're going to start getting people rallying around you. But again, ask questions because like those answers may not be obvious, and try things that seem basic. Again, if you don't have the guts to go out on your own, go work for somebody and get that experience. Working a year in a startup that's moving at 100 miles an hour is like an MBA. I'm not like an anti-MBA guy, but I'm also not like, hey, go to school again. Like that cost, it's very hard to recoup that if you're not going into, iBanking or something else that's very, very fruitful. Yeah. And I would say have humility. The universe will humble you if you're not, humble, and it'll bring you to your knees, and it'll bring you down to your belly, and you're going to hurt, So I would say test, be sure you're testing things, that's kind of another thing too, is like, what is your ideal outcome and what are you trying to optimize for? Like, have a plan, don't just wake up and do stuff. Like, it has to be something you're testing, and, test fast, iterate, and just keep it moving. Don't, you're your own worst enemy. I think one of the things that, a personal thing is calm your mind. I do a lot of meditating. It's a big, important thing in my life and my family's life. Take time to be calm and to kind of, we get on our phones and there's 500 objects we see that create all these emotions in your body. I think taking time to calm yourself down, give yourself that space and that grace to say, what am I really doing here? What am I trying to do for the day? What am I trying to do for the next year or 5 years? Because it's very easy to get swept up in something. You're like, oh my gosh, it is the end of 2022. I didn't get shit done. So like, dude, just be thoughtful and journal if you can, document your life. I think it's important to do that. Reflect on your career as an entrepreneur, and make your own choices. It's very easy to get swept, swept up in the whole AI thing. Like, oh, I got to do the next cutting edge. It was Web3 6 months ago. Like, stick to a path and get a mentor too. I think, I'm giving you lots of advice here, but I think, the things that have worked for me is having a mentor too, like someone you can confide and say like things you wouldn't tell your parents or you wouldn't tell your partner, like, and someone who has experience in the space that you're trying to be in and trying to be successful in, or the thing you're trying to get good at. I think I have a few mentors and they've totally changed my perspective on things. Like I was a unhumble 28-year-old, 25-year-old. And, they really helped me avoid bopping my head a few times where it would have been catastrophic. And I think, if you can find somebody, and it's like, how do you find one? You just ask somebody, like you said earlier, you feel like compelled to help people. There are a lot of people out there like you, like Noah, like Mariah, that want to help people. Just ask them. They would love to be your mentor. You just need to ask. And I think that's the one thing that people are scared to be told no. Whatever, dude. I've been told no a million times and I'm doing well. Like, it's not like my life is easy either, but my life is not as difficult if I just kind of stayed to myself, so that's some kind of advice there. Hopefully that someone can pick something up.
That was awesome. Rapid fire. And I would add that, the thing that you mentioned up top, which you just brought back around, is like dive in and help people for free. Like, don't expect things in return. But you will get a lot out of jumping into somebody else's business or somebody else's issue and helping them solve the problem. You'll always learn something, but you also always feel really good about it as well.
Yeah, I'll put a pin in this as well of that, like, look, I know that in a creative space, it's like, oh, people want me to do their logo for free and this, have some discernment on what to work on for free. Sure. This is not like everybody that comes and asks you to work for free, but like, you're going to get a lot of opportunities. So use some discernment and like, hey, what am I looking to get out of this? If I'm not going to get some revenue out of it, I'm looking to maybe get access to these meetings and be a fly on the wall and learn new things. I want to have access to, different tools. Like someone is willing to let you come in and create an analytics setup for them. Great. You have nothing to lose. You're going to learn a lot, minimally, you're going to get to see their dashboards and like, hey, this is what this brand is doing. And I think that's important to have some discernment, but as much as you can, try to make yourself available for other people. Be a creator, not a consumer, as much as you can. There's so much, energy that can come out of your body to create. Don't just sit on Instagram or TikTok and scroll. Like, there's a lot of cool shit out there to do.
I love that last piece especially. All right, Jim, thanks so much, man. It was great having you. Really excited to explore other future partnership opportunities with AppHub, but
likewise,
for now, really excited to get this out to our audience. It's an awesome episode. So really appreciate you joining us.
Yes. Thank you, Noah, Mariah. I really appreciate it. And I wish you guys much success in 2023, and everybody listening to this, I wish you guys much success. It's going to be a big year.
Thanks, Jim. You as well.
Thanks.